Hello and welcome to Insight Check, the podcast where we do a review of our real play Dungeons and Dragons adventure to help you, give you little tidbits of advice to help you with your own D&D escapades. I am joined with our DM, Storm,
Yo.
and by Elishim, played by Brian.
What's up?
Our other two players couldn't be here today, but they send their best regards and their best wishes, so we can forget about them for an hour. All right, so Storm. Wow, buddy. I mean, you did pretty darn good.
As far as
Combat. We've never really, in the past, we've been playing for a while. We've been playing for about 10 years. But we've always said we've never really enjoyed combat that much. But this time I've got to say, I think you did a pretty darn good job.
I appreciate that because it was probably going into it. I was like, so in the setup for that combat, I wanted it to feel real, like an actual fort of bad guys. But at the same time, having as many combatants as I wanted in that encounter would have taken forever. So I just turned them into, I just used like the swarm rules for the the sword wraith warriors and zombie swarms and everything else. And I think thematically it looked pretty good. And as far as like execution combat wise, it went pretty well. It went on at about the sweet spot. I would have liked to have seen it went on about one more round, but other than that, I've got no complaints.
Okay, so you felt like the length was good, the pacing was good. You felt like everything kind of meshed real well.
Yeah, I think it went as far as like it's a far cry from some of my earlier combats that just slog on and go on forever. You know, we even had a moment to sort of role play in the combat, which was pretty friggin' nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Brian, you're a big fan of the Dungeons and Dragons combat. How do you feel it went?
I mean, I think it went pretty well. I enjoyed it all together. Especially the role playing part. You know, you mix role playing in with the combat, like you were talking about earlier, and that's always a nice aspect especially when you start adding variables into the combat other than just direct combat. Because combat doesn't, I mean, in my opinion, combat doesn't always have to be just, rolling a dice and saying, did you hit or did you miss?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I actually, that's one of my favorite parts of combat is the role playing aspect, especially getting to play as Geralt. Storm, was there ever a moment where you had, I don't know, let's say self-doubt? Yeah, did you ever have a moment like, man, I'm really struggling here, or did you feel confident all the way through? I feel like a lot of DMs, they start off really strong. They've got this plan going in their head. And they're like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. The guys are going to love this. And then they get in there and they're like, oh, crap, this isn't exactly going the way I wanted it to. Maybe it's too long. Maybe it was too short. How do you feel that went?
I think as far as like going into the combat, I was not very confident that this was going to be a pleasurable viewing process or a pleasurable playing process for that matter.
Yeah.
Because I've always had a combat. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Combat is my least favorite pillar of play in Dungeons and Dragons. And just going into that, I felt like it was going to be a slog. I definitely played with some of the mechanics as far as like with the swarm goes, and I was really worried about how that was going to work out. But other than once initial contact was made between the party and the NPCs, that was it. I mean, I think after that first round of combat, I was like, all right, so we've got a pretty solid system here.
Okay, so yeah, you felt good after it got started.
Yes.
Yeah, so you mentioned this, and I want to have twofold questions, and I'm going to go to Brian. You mentioned you did a little play testing. Do you play test your scenarios going in?
No.
No, okay.
No, if you die, you die. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay. So it's one of those things you're like, I think this will be a challenge, or this will be a good scenario to put my players into, and then you just toss them in.
I
willy nilly and hope that
yeah,
we don't
well,
die.
on the one hand, I've definitely put myself in position as far as like the setting and the fact that y'all are devils and have a salvation mechanic
Hmm.
has definitely given me a lot more liberties. But if I didn't have that, then there's different ways of working your way out of a TPK.
Yeah.
Like in that scenario, let's take like the hell salvation mechanic out of it,
Yeah.
and it had just been a one-sided fight. The party got its ass kicked. Then who's to say that the zombies or the zombie commanders, the intelligent undead, didn't want to take the party hostage and be held for Zauron to become sentient undead of their own?
That makes sense. I actually really like that. That's a clever way to kind of DM your way out of a TPK.
Oh yeah.
I
And
like
then as far as like the other half of that, let's say the party realizes that it's getting its ass handed to it,
that. Hmm.
running away is a valid option.
Is it
You know what I
though?
mean?
Is it?
But
Is
not
it
for some
really?
parties.
No. No.
You know, Geralt would not have backed
Geralt would
down.
not have backed down. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I'm saying as a general rule of thumb, retreat
Yeah,
is an option, folks.
yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, Brian, in your experience, do you feel that I want to ask you two questions too. Do you feel that and Storm will come back to you, that the option running away is an option, or do you feel like this is maybe part of the DM, they didn't balance the equation out enough, or how do you feel about running away? Do you feel like it's a sign of a mistake, or do you feel like, hey, that's actually really cool that we went up against an enemy that tough?
Well, it's a funny thing about combat. There's a lot of times like multiple options. I mean, running away is definitely an option. I do agree with that, but it's a cool thing because it's not necessarily the DM's fault if the party doesn't win. I mean, you gotta ask yourself, if you don't win as a party, did you take advantage of everything that you had available to you at that time? Because I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know what everybody else is capable of, but I mean, I know I could have got away. But
Yeah.
That's what's
I like
that's
that.
what's important to
That's
El
what's
Machine.
important. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I guess the important thing, like I mean, I think even if I was looking at, like you're talking about how Gerald wouldn't have ran away, which would have been in character. He probably would have stayed till they had him making death saving throws. Well, that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that the rest of the party couldn't have dragged him away when she was unconscious.
That's true. That's very true.
I mean, there's ways we can get away. I can create all kinds of illusions. I mean, I don't think they work against undead though. But I still have my red sled. I could have left him behind.
Yeah,
I
that's true.
mean, there would have been that option while we made our escape. Now I will say this much: once Sauron got there, I don't think there was a possibility for us to escape.
No, no, not a
We're
chance.
not going to outrun a flying dragon.
No, there's no possible way. Uh, it, I don't know. I like how you put that situation in there with Sauron, because in my mind as Geralt, I was totally ready to fight him, but I do or die at that point. I was like, well, I get revived. Geralt's ready to die. Uh,
It's
Go ahead.
um as far as the Zauron showing out was more or less like the BBEG coming to gloat. You know what I mean? That was, after Dakota had called to request assistance from Ferdinand, or not from Ferdinand, had called Assyrio, and Assyrio was like, I'll get on that. Um,
Hmm.
and Ferdinand showed up. I mean, you could have definitely gotten the fray with Ferdinand and Zauron and all that, and might have changed the tide. But
That's right. Yeah.
Zauron he's well above that of he's edging into like the next level of power up from Dragon Lord status,
Hmm.
simply because he's a Draco Lich with so many immunities, on top of being an ancient dragon already. So
So, so you're telling me that we might have won that encounter
No, no.
no,
with Ferdinand, with
with
Ferdinand?
with an ancient silver dragon backing you up,
Yeah,
it was a possibility,
with
but you would have to
fruitcake.
have yeah with fruitcake, but you definitely could not afford to get hit.
What? But I'm I'm Gerald. I'm Herald of Riser. You're telling me that
What I will say is that if the party had come to the conclusion that they were going to fight Zauron, then that would have been an extremely interesting turn of events for me.
Oh, so you were
'Cause
prepared for that scenario.
it wouldn't have been pretty. I'm just going to be honest with you,
It would
but
have but it would have been fun.
it would have definitely been interesting.
I'd like to shot him with a harpoon and come back, a few months later and see that stuck in his side. Be like, yes. So, Storm, this is the second question I want to ask you, and this is a big one because we've never had this happen before in a campaign. You almost killed a party member.
Oh, you're talking about when Iona become a pincushion?
Yes.
Yeah,
How did
that
it
was
how did it feel, man?
it. It was honestly pretty scary because, first of all, Iona was floating in the air, and as far as like what what Dakota did and put himself in a position to be literally made into a living pincushion was all on him.
He really chose a horrible spot to stay at.
Yeah, if he had like dropped down, cast his lightning bolt, initiative comes back around to him, and then just dipped, because the lightning bolt coming pretty friggin' clutch.
Yeah, it did. Was that his or was that Clay's?
That was his.
Because I don't
It
remember
was one of his.
Dakota rolling above a 10.
It's a saver. It's a save spell.
That's what it was. Okay, okay. Oh, that's right. It's not the breaker, but he had like a boost. He had a boost.
Yeah. Well, that
Yeah.
was when he decided to use it with the fireball and the commander.
Mm-hmm.
But if he had that lightning bolt though.
Save. It did. I remember actually listening to that. I didn't get to the part where he collapsed, but man, that did come in clutch. But so you were scared. You said scared. You mean you were scared for
I
Dakota?
uh, I was scared that I was maybe scared's not the right word. I was concerned because that was sort of like going back to how confident I was in the moment.
Yeah.
It's you want to make a challenging encounter,
Yeah.
but you don't want to like murder your players per se.
Wipe one player in a single turn.
So here's the thing about behind playing as the dungeon master that I don't really think gets talked about a whole lot
Mm-hmm.
is this concept called target priority. So with target priority, Dakota just dropped a big ass spell and did a lot of friggin' damage
Yes.
to a lot of things on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd already said that there was intelligent undead in the fortress. Most of them were intelligent undead, save for the zombie swarms.
Yeah.
So they saw that and they're like, "That's a caster. We need to murder that to death." And then Dakota became a living pincushion.
Oh, so he made himself a threat by being overpowered.
I wouldn't call him overpowered. He did his role as like a striker pretty well. Like
Wait,
that probably cut the encounter length in half.
you don't think Dakota's overpowered?
No.
You're telling me you think someone else in the party is overpowered?
I think as far as like your class dynamics are concerned,
Yeah, yeah.
I think y'all are a pretty balanced, but relatively balanced party.
Well, I tell you what, if you go to Spotify, Your Main Side Quest, there's a poll on the latest session that you can vote at the bottom for the most powerful party member. It is that you like that, didn't you? That was a pretty slick tie-in, wasn't it?
That was yeah.
Yeah.
Shameless self plug.
Shameless self-plug right there. You can go and vote on that right now. Just go to our last session, The Plot Thickens, at Silver Fort, and vote for your opinion on strongest party member. So far, Gerald is in the lead.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Not with just one, he has 2 votes. Oh, yeah.
Dang.
So, yeah, check that out. We are on Spotify, we are on YouTube, and we are on Twitch. Brian, I know
Yeah.
you have had a ton of experience with in terms of reading the books and getting a lot of detail. You absolutely have an incredible collection of D&D memorabilia, core rulebook, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Does the book say anything about how to balance an encounter to make it challenging and stuff like that?
Well, here's the thing: this campaign's kind of homebrew, but as far as like if you stick to canon, yes, there is a CR level that it assigns to basically. It gives a chart basically. And it takes into account how many people are in your party and what level they are, and then it assigns basically a generalized CR level to that party that you can use to therefore uh, refer to the monster manual, and you can make an encounter based off of that. You can go a little above the CR level for a challenging encounter. No more, usually no more than 2, maybe 3 points.
Okay.
And
I have
also, I guess it depends on like the magic items that they may or may not have. So if their magic items are a little bit higher than where they should be at, then you can go even higher than that. It's kind of something you have to kind of play around with, and you can do like a test encounter. And if that test encounter comes across as really easy, then you go ahead and beef it up off of that.
Now, when you say test encounter, do you mean like not with your party, but you have your party's character sheets and you run this and you're like, oh, well, that was way too easy. Let's up it a little bit, or like, wow, they
Well,
got absolutely destroyed.
well, it depends on how you want to approach it. You can do it like that, which is called like a play test.
Yes.
Or you can just as a DM, you could just go ahead and throw in an encounter that you're fairly sure that they'll beat, and then just see how it goes.
Okay. Have a little excitement, have a little fun with it.
Yeah, have a little fun with it, and then if you're fairly sure they're going to beat it, depending on how easily beat it, well, then the next encounter you can kind of build it up to something even better.
Okay.
And plus, that also gives you an idea because I mean, the way you play their characters in an encounter might not necessarily be the same way that they're going to play their characters in an encounter.
Yeah, 100%. I feel this is just my opinion. I feel like the encounter was very balanced. Like Storm, I felt like I already said this, but I feel like you did a wonderful job. But I feel like us working as a team, we don't do that
Mhm.
at all. Dakota kind of took the front line as a striker, and I killed Jake, and I didn't really have a way down to him. So, uh,
I have a rebuttal about the CR system.
oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
So, um, the creator of 5th edition said don't use the CR system.
Really?
Yes, and
Did
I
he?
don't know how much. I don't know how much of that Brian was aware of before that, but the CR system, it it if you eyeball it, it's fine. But in my experience and most other dungeon masters' experience, let's say you're an 8th level party. Okay, if you were to go Nova, you could take a CR 16 monster with no problems whatsoever.
What is Nova?
It means you burn all of your resources in like the first 2 rounds of combat.
Oh, okay. You go like supernova and you burn. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Science with Storm.
So the way that you most of the help that you find online recommends using the XP budgets against the CR systems.
Right.
But the CR system serves its general purpose pretty well as like eyeballing it and go, because if you look at like, let's take a shadow for instance, which is a
Mhm.
half CR monster. You throw that at you throw 2 of those at a first level party. That first level party, that's a TPK waiting to happen.
What's the CR on that?
1/2. It's a half a CR.
Yeah.
Wow, and they'll just absolutely wreck a 1 level party.
Yes, because of it has an ability that drains your maximum hit points.
Was that just an
Yeah.
oversight on part of the Wizards of the
because
Coast?
it's, in my opinion, because it has a extremely low HP pool and
Mhm.
extremely low armor class.
Yeah.
Oh, but it
They
can
are.
kill you. So, okay.
They're easy to kill per se, but yeah, they do have a nasty little ability.
Health
They
drain
also
ability.
they also have advantage on stealth and where their natural
Ooh,
habitat is in the dark.
that
Yeah.
So
that doesn't sound good.
That
Yeah,
first round
typically.
of combat is going to be a surprise round, and then the party's not going to make it after that. Like that's
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
That is one thing I would say that I did read about is DM when he makes encounters has to take into account what their party's capabilities are before you throw something in there, because you could throw something in there that's a lower CR that just happens to have a special ability that would nullify all of your party's ability to react to it.
Mm-hmm.
and that's not something you don't want to frustrate your players. You want them to feel powerful
Yes.
or at least useful in some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
I don't know
Hmm.
if I would for like, powerful as far as like I like to run a power fantasy game,
Yeah.
or I like to play power fantasy. Dungeons and Dragons is power fantasy for me. But if you have like, let's say we get to the like behind the mahogany doors that I'm so famous for, um, and that boss fight, I want that to be as challenging as possible.
Okay, so
Like
you want us to be close to death on
I,
the boss fight.
I wouldn't say I want those to be really swingy combats.
Okay.
Like,
Okay, I know what you're saying. Like you want there to be tension
oh yes,
in atmosphere. Yeah.
that needs to be the climax of the fight. Like your rising tension is the entire dungeon leading up into the boss fight. That's your climax. That's your payoff.
Mm-hmm.
Or
And
rather, that's your climax, and following the payoff is, wow, we just killed this thing.
you know, the more you talk about it, the more I picture like the gameplay loop in my head, the more I think of Monster Hunter World as a game that gets that really, really well.
Yeah, I think that Monster Hunter, because I played a little bit of World, but the Monster Hunter I played was Monster Hunter 4 on the
Mm-hmm.
DS, and I feel like that's a really, it's not my jam, but it's definitely a satisfying gameplay loop.
Yeah, like you find the boss, and when you finally do, that's the payoff. You get this incredible encounter with this super challenging and intricate enemy, and it's fun to do that. So yeah, that kind of I kind of get that loop because I still do not understand how to DM combat. So this is actually good info for me if I ever decide to do that in the future. So haha, haha, interesting thoughts. Um, I don't think I have many more questions to ask. Uh, I do have a question for you, Storm. Yeah. So the balance breakers.
Yes.
Uh, there's this level of responsibility that the player has to communicate certain things. Now, Brian doesn't know what my balance breaker does at all. For those of you who don't know what balance breakers are, it's a piece of homebrew where the dragon spirit that lives in the gauntlets or the bracelets on our arm kind of unleashes part of their power, and we get a kind of like a power up, a special ability. Gerald gets a turret, a very powerful turret, I might add, and it's pretty cool. It's very flavorful. It's cool to role play that. Um, what made you, Storm? When do you decide to release those? Because we had a big encounter. Dakota was very close to death, and then you gave Clay his. Was that the reason you did that? If your party is struggling and you have something up your sleeve, do you always have something up your sleeve to pull out, or you just did that because it was time?
I definitely have something to pull up my sleeve at all times. I don't like to go in. I've said before, I don't go with a plan. That doesn't mean I go. That doesn't mean that I don't go in unprepared. So Clay's balance breaker. So I don't know how much I want to say because there's it's a balancing act, quite literally like a game balance act.
You talking about
Like
creating the balance breakers?
no, I'm talking like what is acceptable for the party to have at their current level.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and say it up front is that looking at Dakota and Brian's balance breakers,
Mm-hmm.
probably more so Brian's than Dakota's, because I put some nastiness into Dakota's because Katarvis holds a special place in the lore.
Mm-hmm.
There's some nastiness attached to that balance breaker.
Now,
Don't get me wrong. I've set up I've set up sort of the parameters of where
mm-hmm.
they're going to happen and how it's going to happen and how I would like for it to go thematically and like storytelling wise.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I don't want to give too much away of saying where, but
Yeah, no, you're
um,
fine. Yeah.
we're coming on the cusp of Brian and Dakota are going to get their balance breakers in the moderately near future.
Okay. Okay. Well, I want to come back to you, Storm. Don't let me forget that I want to ask ideas for having things up your sleeves that a DM can use, like tools, tips, things like that. Brian,
Yes.
so you don't have a balance breaker.
Not yet.
No? Oh, poor Brian. Poor. Can we
Would you
get a little
would you like
tiny clap for Brian in the chat? A tiny clap.
would,
Poor
would you
Brian.
like to know what the name of your balance breaker is?
Armageddon.
Treachery.
Ooh.
Ooh, I like the way that sounds. So, Brian, as a player, I'd imagine you feel a little, I don't know, maybe underpowered.
I mean, I was pretty excited when my red slide was messing up that commander.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That was pretty nice having the 4 attacks per round. I was pretty satisfied with that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. Right now, I mean, you got people throwing out 24d6 fireballs and shit.
Hmm. Do you think the payoff in the future will make up for it, or, what would be your advice to a player who's like, man, I don't feel like I'm doing that hot in combat?
Well, I mean, I would say if you feel like you need to do better in combat as a player, you should really look at your build. What all is available to you? Are you actually playing your character correctly?
You help me
I
out with
mean,
that.
are you,
Yeah.
are you
Hmm.
taking advantage? Is there some sort of skill you're possibly forgetting you could be using?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's just all the different things. I mean, you look to the future. Like, I mean, you look at your build the way you have it now, and you analyze the way he's going through combat, and you think to yourself, well, what could I be doing better? And then that's when you start doing your research.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like a feat that you can take, or hey, there's this spell coming up. I get a third level spell slot. I could put this
Mhm.
there. Yeah. Okay.
Take a
Uh.
2 level group into fighter.
And everything's different. I will say
Yeah.
everything's different because, especially as a spellcaster, you kind of have to balance out your spells between those that do damage and those that will keep me alive.
Yeah. Utility and actual combat spells.
Yeah.
Do you have a ratio? Does the book mention a ratio or anything like that of combat per utility spells?
Uh, not. I don't know. I'm not aware of one per se, but I'm just kind of. I mean, I just happen to know a lot of spells offhand, so
Mm-hmm.
I have an idea of what's actually useful in combat to keep you alive versus what you can cast that won't really do much.
I know what you're saying. Yeah. Um, I was gonna ask you something else, but I don't remember what it was. Oh, I was wondering if it was like Magic the Gathering, where they have like you should have this much land in your deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Now one thing I can suggest is definitely talk to your DM. If you go to your DM and you're like, man, I don't really feel like I'm doing much. He will probably help you out, unless he's just kind of a douchebag, or you're playing a utility character and you didn't realize you were going to play a utility character. You can come up with something with your DM. Don't be afraid to admit, like, hey, I messed up on build, because they're probably more like Storm or Brian, who have a lot more information than I do about Dungeons and Dragons and the builds. So don't be afraid to admit, hey, I made a mistake. What can I do? So now, Brian, or Storm, what was that question I was going to ask you?
Tips for always having something up your sleeve.
Tell me about having something up your sleeve, buddy. How do you get the aces, man? Do you have a website? Do you go on YouTube? Do you just pop this stuff up at the top of your head?
And in the words of my therapist, I have a very active imagination. So, as far as, let's say, for instance, all right, as a dungeon master, you do a lot of praying to the patron saint of college students, and his name is Bullshiticus. Okay, and it's really a fine balance between taking your established world lore because I have a homebrew world.
Yeah.
I could sit here and ramble on to you about like the creation story of my world, what actually happened, the powers that be, the influences, all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, I've had this world in mind for many years, but someone probably more creative than me can come up with something just as impressive in a few months. But as far as like crafting an interesting story for Dungeons and Dragons, in the moment, throw something just crazy at them. Like a prevalent example recently is when y'all went to the world of Ash. It wasn't necessarily in the cards. Like that was sort of a Clay decision. That was not a me
Yeah,
decision.
because he teleported us there.
Yes, which frankly was probably for the best safety of the party, concerning there was about to be a Dragon Lord fight.
Mm-hmm.
But when he took y'all to the world of Ash, like everything I had thought up for the world of Ash just sort of like came to my brain like a Rolodex.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like waiting for the perfect opportunity to introduce Fortuna into the mix.
Mm-hmm.
Because that sets up, because Brian has allied himself with Minimus, the outsider, the other outsider. Fortuna is the diametrically opposed force, and to sort of let Brian's character look upon the face of his enemy.
Yeah,
That sets up for some interesting things in the future. I'm just saying.
We actually had a lot of questions about the world, Ash. We'll get to that maybe at a later date. Maybe once we play the next session, we'll have some more answers to that. But do you have any like you said you just came up with this off the top of your head, but do you have any like some go-tos that you stand by that you're like, hey, this is a good way to throw the party a bone, or hey, this character got introduced and he's a little overpowered. Let me throw the players a bone here. Do you have any go-tos like that DMs can use?
Yes, it's called the B plot.
The B plot.
Yes, the B plot. Fortuna
Fancy.
is a primary example of the B plot in motion. So the best example I can give you of like the B plot in a more traditional setting
Mm-hmm.
is the party is sitting around and then orcs attack. Why did the orcs attack? That's you've created a conflict there.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have a story without conflict. So the orcs attacked. Why? And then you go through the logical steps of that. So you've got your A plot, and the A plot for our campaign is presently Zaurand. Zaurand is currently the A plot. The outsiders are the B plot. So if I need to control the pacing of the A plot, then I'll just throw in something from the B plot, and then the party just naturally gets on that train of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of the big secret about having something always up your sleeve is you have a B plot. Or hell, you could go as far as having a C plot, kind of like your individual character goals. That's sort of like, in my mind, that's the C plot.
Mm-hmm.
It's a plot that each of you have. So I've got my A plot, my primary overarching story, my B plot, which is sort of like this cosmic conflict that's not really been explained very well, and there's still a lot of stuff that I can tease there. And then the C plot is your own personal motivations throughout the world. So having a diverse set of conflicts that I can put them in using A, B, and C plots, then that allows me to craft a more intricately woven story.
I see what you're saying. The conflict adds the details that you want to add to it. I like that. I like that. I always have a conflict or something, some type of escalation on hand. I like that. Brian, what do you think about that advice? You've DM'd a little bit. Do you have any tricks of the trade?
Well, I mean, I definitely agree with the plots. What he calls it the B plot, I call it the plot within the plot. That if you really want to get very intricate with it, you can have multiple plots, have multiple factions, all with their own agendas. And whenever you're making your story, you can sit there and you gotta put yourself in the shoes of your basically enemy, your villains, or whatever you want to call them, your different factions of what's their motives, what are they trying to achieve, what would be their goal to achieve that now. And it could be so you could have like a basically a whole world where all kinds of things are happening around you behind the scenes, and you don't even know about it because you're still focused on this one faction while all these other factions have been doing their thing. Next thing you know, you can be coming down the road and see like a burnt caravan.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
That has nothing to do with what you're doing. Just a burnt caravan that was raided from I don't know, rival bandits moving in.
So you can kind of steer the party in a direction you want to using that conflict.
Yeah, which also generates side quests.
Yeah. When we're all about side quests here. It's in the name.
I would like to, whenever Brian you get done, I want to build on what you just said.
Well, I mean that's pretty much it. The plot within the plot, sometimes the plot within the plot within the plot.
So the thing about plotception. The thing about being a dungeon master is that you control the power of coincidence. A prime example of me using the power of coincidence is in Golden Horizon, where you just so happen to be at the right place at the right time to find that the homunculus girl running away from the guards, thus creating another B plot, which then eventually turned into a C plot for one particular character, but it was also a B plot for the entire party. That's not what you went there to do, but it was definitely a important piece of lore and information.
We got a lot of information from that, actually.
Yeah, you got to mingle with a dragon lord. He knows your names. He knows who you are. You should be scared. And that sort of led into more or less that B plot led into some benefits in the A plot. Like when Janad made the offhand comment, oh yeah, by the way, tell Jebediah that there'll be a 45-second delay in the guard response time to whatever it is you're doing down at Sodom. And that was more or less his subtle way of repaying the debt of rooting out the corruption within his own government.
I'm trying to remember that. I don't remember that, but that's okay because I have like 3 kids. I don't remember.
It is,
but yeah, you have
a pretty minor thing.
You have ways to embellish your story, but you don't want it to be just you telling a story. You want the party to seek out that information. I really like that. That's fantastic advice for anyone planning on DMing. Have a conflict on the outskirts away from your party that you can push in. I really like that. That'll be something that I take going forward. Thanks, you guys.
Not a problem.
All right. Now, we're at that point. What was your favorite part of the session? Storm. Or Brian. You spoke first, Brian. You volunteered.
I mean, I thought it was pretty cool whenever Jared was up there with his dang ballista just blasting that hell out of shit. That was pretty epic. Because kind of reminded me of those little Rambo moments, you know, when he's on the back of the truck with the big 60 caliber machine gun.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
That's exactly what I was aiming for. That's exactly what I wanted. Was
for really?
A Rambo moment, like these ungodly undeads. Oh, you gotta be praised.
Oh man, it was a lot of fun role playing that. Josh said about died when y'all was in the world of Ash, and you was like, you got Lord Sauron, this guy over there doing. I did say that, didn't I? I did call him Lord Sauron.
You got the eye of Sauron over here.
I got the eye of Sauron over here. I completely forgot about that. Thanks, Josh. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Brian, what was your favorite part?
My name is Storm.
Oh, Storm. I'm so sorry. I got distracted by Josh's comment. I'm sorry.
My personal favorite part So I know this has been a sort of a point of contention, or rather my hot take, but I think Shio taking all of the world of Ash and sort of all of like the player interactions that happen there, whether Clay intended it or not, I think from my perspective, as far as being behind the screen and knowing everything,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was absolutely beautiful, and I will stand by that until the day I die. Because like the emotion that Shio as a character felt in that moment
Mm-hmm.
really sort of, in my mind, laid bare a lot of like Shio's character. Now, granted, we didn't really do a whole lot of exposition on what the world of Ash was in relation to Shio going into that, or even
Yeah.
at any point, but it had been sort of hinted at in the Copper D's quest, when he went to the world of Ash and he got this bottle of wine. But I feel like, as far as like for Clay's character, I think that was beautiful. I think it was spot on. I think it was perfect in every way.
Okay.
And that's something that I really want to foster, is this sense that I want if I made this statement earlier, that if you don't have conflict, you don't have a story.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my favorite examples of this is that I've used to keep up with a lot of D&D content on like YouTube and Reddit and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this guy telling a story about how this Dragonborn fighter, and he was like a tiefling sorcerer or warlock or something like that. They just were at the odds with each other at all times. Like they did not have the same moral compass. The tiefling was like on a moral high horse, and the fighter wanted to bring him down a couple pegs. And eventually, it came to a front where they just kicked the shit out of each other.
Heck yeah.
And that was kind of discussed outside of game before it happened, so that there was
It
no
was discussed.
it was more or less like, hey, it was kind of like, this is like, I've noticed this is a problem in the game, that our characters are butting heads.
Okay.
How can we make this narratively satisfying to sort of bring this to a resolution after they brought it to a resolution outside of the game?
Yeah.
And then they just decided, we're just going to kick the shit out of each other. And then after they duked it out, and the fighter put the warlock on his ass and was like, quit being such a pretentious prick. And that allowed for that character to sort of self-reflect and look at their actions and go, okay, maybe I was a bit of an asshole in hindsight.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like, I think that's like peak storytelling in Dungeons and Dragons, is when
Mm-hmm.
your players trust each other enough to be able to have that conflict in the game, realize that it's seeping outside of the game, or rather be like, hey, what the hell's going on? And then kind of have that back and forth. And then, how do we resolve this between our characters without, just completely acting differently towards each other? What's the inciting incident that allows our characters to start treating each other differently?
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're saying. And as a DM, you're gonna have conflict, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we've sort of shied away from like inter-party conflict.
Mm-hmm.
We always talk about like the asshole role that steals all the party's gold. That's one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, just straight up, like, let's say you have like a lawful good and a like chaotic neutral individual, and then they butt heads naturally, and you just sort of try to spin both plates and satisfy both sides of the spectrum without having those characters interact and like butt heads about it.
Yeah.
I think that trying to find like a common middle ground in game, in character, would be a lot or be a lot more I lost the word. It would be a lot more narrative. It would be a lot more narratively satisfying than just changing the way that the characters are played.
Okay. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Kind of doing an exposition on the process of these two characters finding a
Yeah.
middle ground. Yeah. 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 That makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Uh, I forgot where I was. I don't remember where I don't even know what day it is, guys.
I don't either.
I want to say this. Okay, there was one. If do you guys watch the stream, right?
I did not get around to watching the stream this time.
Okay, that's fine.
I watched most of it.
So it's really difficult for me to separate these two parts of myself because like part of me is playing like editor and producer, I guess you'd call it. I don't know, with the soundboard, and I threw in some music in there. Apparently the Russians didn't appreciate it. Oh. But Brian, you listened to it. Did you appreciate the music?
Yes. There is one thing that I did get some criticism on.
Okay, yeah.
If you want to hear it.
Yes, 100%. I want to do the best job I can. I need criticism.
Okay, so not the music that you played was bad or like that. It's just I heard someone mention that you had to, whenever you was flipping back and forth between the soundboard and the stream and all this stuff, that the actual stream was changing to what you were showing on your screen.
Yes.
So would it be a possible way to make a separate Discord account and attach it to there where you're controlling the music on the other side and it's still streaming? Or
so I think if you go to like your screen share, you have the option to share the Discord, like the Discord screen.
No. He's talking about my OBS. Yes, Brian, I think it would be possible. Do I know exactly how to do that? No, but I appreciate. Now, 100%. I want to tell you, thank you, because you could see me type it in on YouTube. You could see me close out the soundboard, and in the back of my mind, I was in such a hurry that I was like, I ain't got time to do anything with this. I've got to just get this done and keep going so we can have some music playing.
Yeah.
But I think there would be a way for me to just keep my screen on Discord. So if that ruined your immersion or took you out of the moment, I'm very, very sorry. I am new at this. I'm not the best. But Brian, I appreciate you saying that. That'll be something I definitely look into before the next stream. Storm, just so you know, Josh said he did agree with you about the World of Ash and Clay's reaction. And he also said the music was so epic. Thank you, Josh. I appreciate you, sir. Hey. I can't think. Oh, my favorite moment. Okay. So Storm.
Mm-hmm.
Just so we can clarify this for anybody listening or watching. Okay. You could not hear the music.
I could not hear the music.
Only the people watching the stream could hear the music. Okay. So, are you ready for this? I'm gonna play just maybe like a minute of the session, and you played this perfectly. Are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead and hit it.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
So, Clay, you're under the impression that you have reached the balance breaker of your sacred gear.
Oh wow. Hello.
I think you forgot.
Gio just looks around at this.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm so
this
excited.
Kind of shifted alternate reality.
I mean, I'm watching
as she realizes
your excited expressions. But there's
What?
empty silence. Did you
No, it's not showing up. I was so excited. I was sitting there like, yes, I'm so excited about this. So you can't see it on my screen?
No,
See what?
you didn't start streaming your video or you
Oh.
didn't start streaming on the Discord.
I thought I was streaming. We get to do this again. Yay.
Sorry, chat. Technical difficulty.
Sorry, guys. It's difficulty. You know what's up. Do elevator music. Okay. What's funny is I just like shook my fist in excitement on the stream.
Yeah,
You're just
that's
like,
what I was like.
just like,
Is something supposed to happen?
Nathan? Okay.
Go ahead.
Are we ready now?
Yeah, we're ready now. So, Clay, you're under the impression that you have reached the balance breaker of your sacred gear.
Oh wow.
Gio just looks around at this this kind of shifted alternate reality as she realizes this may be able to turn the tide.
It was so perfect.
Damn, I really did.
You did. And there was like a whole minute before that where you just nailed the timing. When there was a lull in the music, you spoke. When the music picked up, you were silent. It was so good. It was like at a minute 23 or an hour 23.
I'll have to go
And
back and watch
you
that.
have to check it out, man. I got goosebumps and you couldn't see it during the session, but I was like in the back of my seat, like, Storm, you madman. It
I ain't gonna
was,
lie, Chief. That was pretty freaking awesome.
that was incredible. You need to check that out. That was the highlight for me, is just listening to you and Clay monologue that back. And you couldn't even hear it, but you were timing it with the music. And it just played out perfectly. It's like an hour 23 minutes in. Just fast forward to that and check it out. It was fantastic. It in my opinion, that's what justified the music for me. Because at first Brian was sneaking into the back to get to the guard, and I was like, we need some Metal Gear Solid music. The alert theme for when we start combat, because he's being all Metal Gear Solid Snake on us. And then that happened, and I changed the song around that time, and it just worked out perfectly. So that was my highlight. I really enjoyed that.
That's absolutely fantastic.
So
And I
good.
love every second of it.
Oh man.
I think that if we looked at, like, because I know when YouTube sent you that email about the Russian mafia coming after us, um, I know they were like, "Here, use some copyright free nonsense." You know,
Yeah.
if you want to send me that link and I can look at some of it, you know, like
Link
non
to
copyright music.
just you go to YouTube Studio. It's at. I
Is it?
don't. So for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, one of the songs that I used on the session last time got us copyright claimed in Russia. So
It,
don't
however, did not affect the channel, fortunately. So
it didn't affect us in America or even China. Apparently the Chinese don't even care. And when the Chinese don't care, I mean, come on, man. Something's up. You know something's up.
oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that was super enjoyable. I'll send you that link and we'll check it out. If you are DMing just from this past session, I'm gonna work on that, Brian. Thank you so much. But I would definitely suggest some music. I think it really made it. I think it made it really, really good.
So I have a request / question.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I've been toying around with the idea of doing like Dungeons and Dragons content for, like, just doing it to YouTube, putting it up on YouTube for anyone who watches the stream that has any interest in the way that I do things.
Like a behind the scenes.
Not necessarily behind the scenes. I mean, there would definitely be some like behind the scenes stuff. So I don't
Mhm.
recommend any of you watching it. But if the audience at large would like to view it, I've played around with that idea. If you want to put a poll somewhere,
Oh,
because
okay. Yeah. Well,
the last stream, um, we hit. I'm looking at
like
trying.
80.
We hit 61 views on.
That is not counting YouTube or Spotify.
Oh, that 100% correct. You're right.
Yeah.
Um, if you want to go, if you wherever Nathan wants to put a poll up, if you want to swing by there and put a poll up and be like, do you want Storm to make Dungeons and Dragons content about how the way he runs his games, or Dungeons and Dragons, or whatever? You know, that would definitely push me in the direction of wanting to do it a little bit more, especially now that I've invested a little bit more in my audio setup. Um, you know, if that's something that interests you, um, do try to communicate that in some way. You know, we're on YouTube and we've got a fancy email and
Yeah.
we're moving up in the world. You know what I mean?
Well, one thing I'll say, Storm, is I think you've done a fantastic job with the session. Um, so why would you hesitate, man? And the reason I say this is not to like throw you under the bus, but there are tons of people out there, I know there are, who have considered playing Dungeons and Dragons, and they're just like, well, maybe if I had something to give me a little push, man, just do it. You're good at it. You're great at
my
it.
my biggest thing is that there's so many people out there that want to more or less be the next Matt Mercer
Yeah.
and like be the defining voice of Dungeons and Dragons. that
Mhm.
it's like, man, do I really want to compete with that? You
You're
know?
darn freaking right we do. Yes, I just didn't even pronounce my R right, and I don't care. Okay? You're darn white we do.
You join races.
That's what it sounded like. But yeah, it's like Brian, if you don't mind me mentioning Brian, but you kind of wanted to give DMing a shot, and so you just went out and you did it. If you were on the fence about Dungeons and Dragons, just give it a try. It's a lot of fun. I think you'll really enjoy it.
I strongly recommend to just full send and pray to the patron saint of college students, Bullshiticus, and just send it.
Just,
Full
just,
send.
just do
Do
it.
it.
Just know that your first
Imagine.
time can be a little rough.
I want you to imagine Shia LaBeouf standing in front of you, saying, "Do it,
Just do.
do it. What are you waiting for? Just do it."
Yeah, I'm actually. And speaking of which, I'm actually really excited about that campaign now too. So, what started off
Yeah.
tentatively in the beginning is, grown to be pretty. It's pretty exciting.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. I want to share how I actually got into dungeon mastering really quick.
Go ahead.
So
Yeah.
it was like 2000, I want to say it was like 2018, 2017. It was Christmas time. Me and Dakota were talking, and we're like, neither one of us had done any of the Christmas shopping we needed to do, like at all. So we went up to the mall up in Knoxville, and we were walking through the nerd store, and I saw that the player's handbook, the dungeon master's guide, and the monster manual were all on sale for like $20 a piece, when normally they go for like 35, 40. And I just sent a message to our group chat like, hey, how do we feel about Dungeons and Dragons? Everyone's like, yeah, we'd be willing to give it a shot. So I just bought the books and we just fucking send it,
Heck yeah.
you know?
And you're still
And
going.
we're still going, you know? I mean, being a dungeon master is a very much a learning process.
Yeah.
But if you're like on the fence about it and you've got people that are like interested, they might be on the fence about it, just fucking send it. Send it. Do it. Do it.
Heck yeah. Do it.
That's probably the best advice that I can give you is just do it. It might be like you might view it as like a living dumpster fire that you'll have to like overshadow with later works. And I feel the exact same way about my first and second campaign.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be honest with you. And I think that the point that we're at narratively, where I've like grown into the role and learned sort of like the tricks of the trade and like the spider web of pulling things together and creating a narratively satisfying story in the moment is
Mhm.
all based on experience. So, if you're like concerned about some things, watch some YouTube guides, and there's people out there that's much smarter than excuse me, there's people out there that are much smarter than I am that I have listened to, and I just listen, get a good frame of reference, and just do it. Send it.
Listen, what are you talking about? This is a YouTube guide. Got everything you need
You
right
know,
here. We got DM advice, man. Real life DM advice. Okay?
yeah,
You've
I
got
think that's
a walking Viking, Brian, giving you advice. Then you've got the White Russian, and I mean that in both ways. Like you might as well just be like 80% vodka.
I am 80. Well, actually, I'm not. I'm currently on 80% Voodoo Ranger, but
And then you have some inexperienced Jewish noob. So I mean, what else? What else do you need, guys? This is the best content you're gonna get out there, bar none. I I can't I
we
can't
might
say
be.
with a
We
straight
might
face.
not. We might not be. We might not be as like been at
Eloquent.
this since the. We might not be been at this since like the 80s or the 90s, but by God, we're doing the best we can.
Darn right. Modern is what we call ourselves. Modern problems
Yeah.
require modern solutions.
Jesus.
Oh God. All right, Brian. Any closing thoughts there, buddy, before we go?
Uh, you know, I think you're right. I think Storm does do a tremendous job and everything, and I since I started DMing, of course, I've been doing it completely different than he does. I
Mhm.
can only imagine the amount of work he must put into what he does.
Mind-boggling
God.
to
It
contemplate.
is mind-boggling because I'm taking a much more simpler and easier approach, and I'm just using Canon, and so I can only imagine. I think about the fact that he's made all this stuff homebrew, and I think it's of all the stuff he's had to make up, and then visualize, and then adapt and make it real.
It's a lot. Guys, like at home, I don't know. Josh probably does. Bless your heart, Josh. We're really sorry.
Poor
But
Josh.
poor Josh.
He knows more about the campaign and the world and the setting than any of you do. Poor Josh.
Poor Josh. But yeah, it's a ton of work. He has like documents, spreadsheets, binders, photos, investigative boards, everything.
Oh God.
Everything.
Jesus.
Yeah.
When I said I do not recommend doing what I did, I fucking meant it.
Well, Storm, any closing thoughts from you, buddy?
First and foremost, Josh, I really appreciate you saying that I sound a hell of a lot better because yes, I am using my new mic. Um, the boot arm for it came in right as I left for work today, so I literally spittily threw it together as we started the stream.
Heck yeah.
But as far as like my closing thoughts on Dungeons and Dragons
Mm-hmm.
is, or as far as like the campaign is concerned, um, just do it. Do the best that you can. If you want to rely on like the canon lore like Brian does, then do it. In my opinion, there's two types of dungeon masters: those who can run modules and those who cannot. I am part of those who cannot camp. You know, um, I've been entertaining my ideas about my next project, but if you have a passion and a story you want to tell with a setting that you create from the ground up, then go for it. Do it. If you want to try it out and run a module, best luck to you because that's not something I can do. It's just not. I bought Tomb of Annihilation, could not make heads or tails of it. I was like, we're gonna keep that for the monsters in it. But I think as far as if you're on the fence about running a campaign, or if you've got a story idea that isn't just the DM's novel, if you've got a world you want to build, and I've often compared Dungeons and Dragons to writing a book, but there's a key detail in that your players are also people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you're like world building, if it's something you really like, and you've got a world like this, it lives a rent free in the back of your head,
Mm-hmm.
then just think about it, process it, the ins and outs of it, write it down, just do whatever your creative process demands that you do to turn it into a campaign. And if you've got people that want to play in that world, just send it, man. That's the best advice I can give you. Is just send it and pray to Bullshiticus that you do it well.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Lots of
Now,
prayer. Go ahead, Brian.
now I will say this. It's kind of a tie in what you said, Storm. If I got time, is it okay?
Yeah, of course, of course.
As far as like running a module, I'm not running I'm like my campaign I'm running is not necessarily from a book, but I am using the canon and things like that. And I have an advantage there because I've been reading Forgotten Realms books since I was a kid. I mean, Elminster Goes to Hell and things like that. I mean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Elminster, but he was a
No.
really fun wizard to read about.
I have to check him out. I like reading about the lore that you send me. It's really good stuff.
Well, there's actually a book where he goes to hell. It's literally called Elminster Goes to Hell, and he's just blasting through demons left and right, and But
Hell yeah, what a man.
Yeah.
bloody sprays of gore and things like that. But I've read all those books, so I already have a very good, solid foundation of all kinds of lore and stuff related to this stuff to work from. I mean, if I was going to, it would probably be more challenging. But as far as world building goes, it's easy to go online and find maps. Like I'm looking at a map of the Sword Coast right now. I have a whole map of it.
I had a thought. I had a thought
And the
as far
booze
as
took it away.
probably yes, but I think sort of what's left of that thought anyway is that I remember what it is now. I wanted to tease what the next arc is going to be.
Ooh. Everybody likes a good tease.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, as far as the next arc, I will openly admit that Brian is the lore savant of the Underdark.
That's a fancy word.
I know, and I am intoxicated too. Isn't it great?
I know what idiot savant is. So it's kind of like that.
You calling me an idiot?
No. I was just making the comparison. Idiot savant and the lore savant.
Brian is down with the lore savant of the Underdark.
Yeah.
And I guess this is sort of a two-pointer here. Is that if you like something from the lore of Dungeons and Dragons, yet again. If you like something from the lore of Dungeons and Dragons, and you want to bastardize it and fit it to your own world, feel free, be at liberty.
Listen, all the memes I've seen has said if you don't plagiarize every piece of literary work or anime or Dungeons and Dragons, you're doing it wrong.
I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment.
Yep.
So as far as like Brian's character or Brian himself is concerned, I want to take his knowledge of the Underdark, and I want to first and foremost, I'm going to bastardize it to my own needs, my own ends, and forgot about that until I just thought about it. Excuse me, that tickled me pink.
You're all right.
It's actually not something I'm going to discuss presently, but I'm definitely going to take the Underdark and I'm going to warp it in a way that Brian himself is going to go, wait a fucking second, something's not right here. And that's going to sort of inform Shin's thinking process as to while he's in the Underdark. Because I want to take my setting, what I've worked so hard on, and I want to take it and I just want to flip it on its head using nothing more than a piece of lore that was only printed one time in 1988 from Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay. Well, now you've got me curious.
Yeah, it got me curious too.
Yeah.
It was printed one time in 1988.
1988. I'll have to check this out. I'm going to look this up. I mean, I'm sure we can find it now, Brian. Surely.
Surely to God.
Surely. 1988.
It was in Dragon Magazine for all those interested.
Dragon Magazine. That sounds. Is that like?
It was either the 1988 was when they first, or 1988 was when they first discussed the concept.
Mm-hmm.
But then they expanded on it a couple years later, or maybe a couple years beforehand. I really don't remember. But I just recently watched a video on it, and you better believe it knocked my fucking socks off.
Oh, it was that cool?
It was that. I wouldn't necessarily call it cool, but it's so. Maybe you could call it cool, whatever your preference is. But to me, it was so like ground shaking.
Yeah.
To like the normal Dungeons and Dragons canon, that I just had to use it. Had no choice. I looked at that and went, that would fit outstandingly.
Heck yeah.
Does it have to do with shadow dragons?
No.
Look at you. Look at you trying to coax a tease.
You're in the right strain. You're in the right vein of thought, though. I will tell you that. Are you committed? Are you familiar with the thought of color theory? And that's where I'm going to leave it.
The thought of color theory?
Yep, we got it now. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out exactly what it is.
It out,
we got it now. Color theory. Surely to God, we can find something if we search for color theory.
I'm familiar with prismatic spells, like
All right.
prismatic wall and prismatic spray.
Fine, I'm gonna give you one more thing.
You just can't help
Green.
yourself, can you? You just
I
gotta.
can't. Green is not a primary color. That's it.
No,
That's all I'm saying. It's the end
I
of the
got you.
conversation. Green is not a primary color.
It's kind of
19 the Dragon magazine of 1988. Green is not a primary color. End of the conversation. I'm done.
okay.
All right.
I have a feeling it's somehow related to how white is the presence of all colors and darkness is the absence of all colors.
Oh God, if you only knew.
The yin and the yang of the Underdark.
I refuse to answer.
Suddenly he realizes I've said too much.
I don't think I've said too much, but I think I've said enough to sort of like,
D&D FBI is gonna be knocking on your door. I think
It's
Storm just fell out of his chair.
Not my phone to the ground
So,
because it's sitting precariously on my laptop. But it's such an obscure part of Dungeons and Dragons lore that I couldn't help but play with it a little bit.
well, man, I'm really excited to see what you got in the future. Sounds awesome.
I'm very excited to see. Personally, I'm very excited to see Brian's reaction because he's so intimately familiar with the Underdark.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm definitely looking forward to it. I've done enough research on the Underdark to have enough of what I needed from it,
Mm-hmm.
and now I just get to bastardize it and turn it on its head. Turn it on its head. Very excited about it.
Heck
Huh.
yeah. Turn it around for your own selfish purposes. I love it.
Yes,
Yes.
correct.
And
yes.
you know what else I
Another
love?
synonym for yes.
You know what else we love, Storm?
Views.
Our wonderful
Subscribers.
community is what you mean. You're so drunk. Anyway, we really want to thank you guys from the bottom of our heart. The time that you spend with us, he does call that views, but it's really just the time that you spend with us as a group. We really, really appreciate that. It means so much to us. You'll probably never know. We get so excited to see the amount of time that you spend watching the videos, and it means a whole lot to us. And we would love to have you follow along with us live. So make sure if you're not following us on Twitch, make sure to follow us and hit that notification bell. You can find us on YouTube and Spotify at YourMainSideQuest. And we also really want to hear from you. We have an email set up just to actually get messages from you. It's YourMainSideQuest@gmail.com. We really do. We love seeing y'all interact with us, whether it's just through views. We're glad that you're enjoying the content and that what we're making gets people excited. So please follow us. We love having you guys on the show.
I'm genuinely like it's really exciting to see the amount of like viewership we have, and I oversimplify it probably because I've had a little too much to drink, but it really makes me happy that people are enjoying what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you don't have like a question for the podcast, just shoot us an email that says, "Hey, I like your content." That'll make our damn day.
Oh, we'd love it.
Send us an
Absolutely love it.
email that says, or send us an email that says, "Fuck you." I don't care. Just interact with
I
us
mean,
a little
yeah.
bit.
If there's
Give us-
something
give
we
us-
need to improve on, yeah, 100%. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if there's something you want to see more of or less of or whatever, if you think, stay the course, you're doing a great job, make the positive feedback the positive feedback loops in our brains go, yeah, here's some dopamine,
Yeah.
help us out.
Good stuff. But yeah, thank you guys so much. And definitely do not be afraid. We're really nice guys. It'll be me answering you. So, I'll be nice. I'm always nice.
And we will give praise to Riser on Geralt's behalf.
You're darn right. You must be signed Praise Riser and your
Praise
name at the bottom.
Nah.
Let us go. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Josh, Tim, thanks for tuning in. Everybody else who's watching, we really, really appreciate you. following with us, make sure to hit that notification bell. We'd love to have you live on the show. Always try to message y'all in chat when you message. So thank you so much. This is the end of the Insight Check. You can see us Saturday when we start our next session at 11:30 to 12. We start somewhere around there depending on when we all get off work. And we hope you'll have a fantastic night. See y'all next time.
Bye.
Later.